Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Observing with Webb for January of 2016. January is looking pretty interesting, more interesting than a normal January because we've got 4 planets we can see in the morning. Comet Catalina is still visible if you have binoculars. The Quadrantid Meteor shower is going to happen, even though it's not the best. And we have an occultation of bright Aldebaran. So it's going to be cold. Well, maybe. Not over Christmas time. But we have plenty of night to work with, so that gives us a lot to work with. So let's first talk about the planets if we take a look at our screen here. First of all, as far as planets you can see around sunset, this month is, well, none. Nothing's really visible around sunset. There's nothing really in the night sky around sunset, so forget about it. But as far as planets you can see throughout the night, here's what's going to happen. If we look at, let's look toward the east, and let's watch, oh, look at that, there's Orion, that's looking pretty nice, Gemini's above it, Canis Minor, and, oh, there's Canis Major with the brightest star, Sirius. In fact, I was almost fooled the other night. I thought that was a planet, but then I realized, as I looked up, I saw Orion's belt up there, and that was that meant that this was Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, and not a planet. But what happens is around January 1st, Jupiter is going to rise up in the east right around 11 p.m. Okay, and in fact, let me go to like mid-month on an average. Mid-month it'll be a little bit earlier, but it's going to rise around 10:30, 11 p.m. And what's going to happen is throughout the night it's going to rise up. Let me zoom out a little bit. It's going to rise up and it's going to move throughout the sky. It's going to move toward the southwest. And by the morning, it'll be in the southwest. But what happens also is around 2 a.m., Mars pops up and rises as well over there in the, I believe, the southeast. Oh, my directions aren't on. But there's Mars down there below Spica, which is the brightest star in Virgo. And that rises up. And yeah, they just sort of follow throughout the night. And then you've got Saturn and Venus popping up after about 5:30 a.m. Okay, or well, I guess after 4 a.m. typically, but definitely after 4 a.m. you'll be able to see Venus and Saturn. So let me just talk about Venus and Saturn real quick because they do a little dance throughout the month. Let me go back to January 1st. January 1st in the southeast. If you wake up around sunrise, around 6 a.m., and you take a look out, Venus is going to be very, very bright and above Saturn. And I'm going to fast forward throughout the days. What happens is Venus and Saturn get closer and closer together until January 9th, when they're actually only half a degree apart. And then they switch places. So for the rest of the month, Venus is getting lower and lower in the sky, and Saturn is getting higher and higher. And then they start moving apart for the rest of the month. As you see, by January 31st, Venus and Saturn are much further apart. And Venus is pretty low. It'll be harder to see by the end of the month. And I guess technically at the end of the month you might be able to see Mercury, but it's pretty close. So you need really clear skies and a very clear view of the horizon. So it's not really worth looking for Mercury. Okay? But if we take a look at around mid-month, we take a look at the morning sky, you're going to see Venus and Saturn off in the southeast. Mars will be more toward the south, and Jupiter will be high in the southwest. Yeah, so that's what we got for planets for the month. So let me go ahead and talk about what events we have going on for the month as well. First of all, we've got Comet Catalina. Now, like I've said before, Comet Catalina is not going to be a Halley's Comet type thing where you can see it with your naked eye, but Comet hunter David Levy has said before that comets are basically cats. They both have tails, and they both do exactly what they want. So we never really know. Maybe it'll get super bright, maybe it'll just fade out. We just have no idea. Okay, but I'll just say I'll put some links on my Podbean site, that a couple links to 2 good sites that explain how to view it, because it's a little complicated. But if we take a look here around let's see, January 15th is when I have this going. Around January 15th, Comet Catalina is actually, whoops, all the way, there we go, hold on, don't get too sick. around January 15th, Comet Catalina is up here by the end of the handle of the Big Dipper. And it actually takes this sort of path. Okay, let's start on the 1st. Comet Catalina on the 1st is actually up here very close to Arcturus, the brightest star in Bootes. Okay, and then what happens is throughout the month, it's actually going to get higher and higher in the sky and then actually move toward the Big Dipper. And after the 15th, it's going to get dimmer and dimmer as it gets closer to Polaris, which is actually kind of neat to see a star in Polaris, or near Polaris. But anyway, that's the path it's taking. Basically, it started down here toward the ecliptic, and now it's going up here. Okay? All right. So that's Comet Catalina. I'll stop talking about it. You can find more information on the internet. So let me go back to January 2nd. Because January 2nd, we have a last quarter moon. Let me go to sunrise on January 2nd. As you can see, you've got a nice third quarter moon that's visible from midnight and into the morning. And then on the 2nd and the 3rd, you've got a nice close encounter between the moon, Jupiter, and Mars. And I say the moon, Jupiter, and Mars are kind of far apart, but the moon is directly in between Mars and Jupiter. So if you're trying to find Mars and Jupiter, morning of the 2nd is a good time to look because you'll find the moon really easily. Mars will be about 10 degrees to the left, Jupiter about 10 degrees to the right. Easy to find. Jupiter will be much brighter and Mars will be a little more red. Then, on the 3rd, the moon is much closer to Mars. Much, much closer here. As you see, Jupiter's back over here and Mars is over here. And yeah, it's a good time to find Mars. Just find the moon, find red Mars right nearby. Now what's going on the night of the 3rd into the morning of the 4th is the Quadrantid Meteor shower. Now you do have to get up super early. They're saying 3:30 in the morning to really get a good view of these. And you do have the moon interfering a little bit, but not too much. But go ahead and take a look. It's not something that you want to totally plan for, and if it's too cold, I wouldn't go out. But yeah, I think it's worth at least taking a look. Okay? And if you want more information, I'll put some links on the Podbean site, and you can find some good stuff there. Or just search Quadrantid Meteor shower. Excuse me. All right, so anyway, what happens to the moon over the next little bit? Well, on the 4th, it'll be lower, thinner, and dimmer. Again on the 5th. And then on the 6th, it actually starts joining with Venus and Saturn. So if you look toward the southeast in the morning, let's see, let me rewind time a little bit. After 5:30, so after 5:30 in the morning on the 6th, you can see a very thin, very nice crescent moon just barely up here. And Venus is going to be super bright and down and to the left, and Saturn is going to be down and to the left as well. And on the next morning, the moon is actually going to have moved over to the left of both of these. Okay, so that's going to be really nice to see on the morning of the 7th, after 5:30 in the morning, Venus, Saturn, the moon all together. Then, of course, the moon gets even thinner and even darker until the 9th, when we have a new moon, and that's when we switch around. If we want to find the moon, we have to look toward sunset in the west. And let's see, let's go a little bit past sunset, about 6 p.m. And oh, I forgot, on the 9th, on the morning of the 9th, this is when you see the conjunction of Venus and Saturn. These two are only half a degree apart. And in fact, if you have a good telescope with a wide field of view, you'll be able to actually see the rings of Saturn and Venus all in one shot. Binoculars might help you get this, but it's possible. It's really neat. This doesn't happen very often at all, so go out and find that conjunction. Anyway, let me zoom out and let's go back again. That's sunrise. Let's switch to sunset in the west, January 9th. And what's going to happen is, if you're looking at night after sunset, Maybe on the 11th, you'll see a very thin crescent moon. On the 12th, it'll be a little thicker, a little higher. 13th, a little thicker, a little higher. 14th, a little thicker, a little higher. 15th. And then on the 16th, you've got your first quarter moon. High in the sky, you can see it from, well, until about midnight, because that's when it sets. And then the really cool thing, well, it depends on how you look at it. I think it's pretty cool. But each day gets thicker and thicker and brighter until, oh, look at that. On the night of the 19th, the moon is getting suspiciously close to Aldebaran. And I'm actually going to center on Aldebaran to show you what happens. On the 19th, I'm going to fast forward time a little bit, the moon is actually going to, in its travels throughout the night, it's going to occult Aldebaran. Occult means to pass in front of. And so what's going to happen, you notice the left-hand side of the moon is dark, but the right hand is lit up at about there, right about 9:30 p.m. for those of us in Lancaster County. There are some links on the Podbean site to different sites that will give you more predictions. But right around 9:30, Aldebaran will just disappear behind the moon. And then it's not going to appear until about an hour and a half or so later on the other side of the moon, on the bright side. It just doesn't happen very often. That's why this is pretty cool. I know, it's not amazing. It's not a supernova. It's not a meteor shower, but it's still pretty darn cool. So let me zoom back out. Okay, we have a nice waxing gibbous moon. And night after night, it's going to get thicker and thicker until the full moon, which is on January 23rd. January 23rd, you have a full moon, visible from sunset all the way to sunrise. And, oh, the second to last thing would be a couple days later. It's now a waning gibbous moon, and now we see the moon and Jupiter off in the east in the morning. They're going to be very close together. In fact, way early in the morning when they rise together, about 9:30 p.m. Actually, that's not morning, that's the evening of the 27th. They're going to be pretty darn close, about 2 or 3 degrees apart. And then as the night goes on and into the morning, they actually move further and further apart and move toward the south. Then over the next couple nights, the moon gets, again, thinner and thinner. And on the 31st, we have a last quarter moon, or a third quarter moon, and that's visible from about midnight all the way into the morning. Maybe even on your morning drive, you'll be able to see it. So, yeah, those are the events that are happening. And I want to go really quickly with the winter constellation tips. I know I've talked about this before, but let's go to, let's say, mid-January, let's say the 15th, and let's go to, I don't know, how about 9 p.m., because that's a good time for people to go out. 9 p.m., what you'll be able to see around 9 p.m., this is the key, the winter constellations, okay? You've got Orion, which is the nice big bow tie in the sky. Really, it's the hunter, and he's got this belt of stars right in the middle, 1, 2, 3, and those 3 belt stars are going to help you find some things. Okay? Side note, really cool, there are 3 kind of stars down here, but one of those is the Orion Nebula, which you can actually see is a little fuzzy with binoculars or a telescope. But if you zoom out from that, you've got Orion's belt, okay, the knot of the bow tie. If you follow those 3 stars to the left, boop, 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 you get the brightest star in the sky, which is known as Sirius, which is the brightest star in Canis Major as well. Now, if you go back to Orion's belt and follow him instead to the right, you'll find Aldebaran, which is the brightest star in Taurus. Follow those a little bit further to the right, and you'll find the Pleiades over here. And then if you look above Orion, you'll be able to see Gemini, the twins, Canis Minor, which are these 2 stars over there that make up a little dog. Don't know how that happened. And then probably because there's a big dog right nearby. And then you can also see Auriga, the charioteer, up here. Okay? So anyway, that is really it for the month of January. And I'd like to wish you all very clear, dark skies for the month and the new year.